The silence is the first thing anyone notices, not the quiet of a peaceful morning. The wrong kind of quiet, the kind that settles over a commercial apiary when 40,000 bees should be roaring and instead there is nothing. Rows of white boxes stretch across a field in the county's biggest operation, and not one of them is humming. A veteran beekeeper, 31 years in the business, pries open a lid he has opened 10,000 times before. He doesn't need to look twice. Dead bees carpet the bottom board in drifts. The brood comb is empty. The queen is gone. Or worse, alone. By mid-morning, the county extension office has taken 6 calls. By afternoon, it's 17. Agricultural officials load up trucks and start driving from farm to farm, taking samples, taking photos, writing down numbers that don't make sense yet. Phones ring across the county with the same 4 words. Did your bees make it? Almost no one says yes. But 11 miles out, past a gravel road most people forget exists, there is a sound that shouldn't be there. A low, steady drone rolling out from a cluster of hives tucked behind a fence row of clover. Thousands of bees working. Coming and going in thick, unbroken lines, heavy with pollen, undisturbed. The man who owns them didn't inherit an empire. He didn't get lucky. 8 months ago, he spent $50 on the sickest, most hopeless bee colonies in the county. The ones nobody else would even bid on. So why, when every other apiary for 30 miles is going silent, are his colonies the only ones still alive? To understand that, you have to go back to the auction nobody thought was worth attending. It's late autumn, and the county's oldest beekeeper is finally hanging it up. 40 years of hives, and his hands can't do the lifting anymore. His grandson doesn't want the business. Everything goes on the block. Supers, extractors, smokers, and 42 colonies nobody has properly managed in over 2 seasons. The men who show up aren't casual bidders. They're commercial operators, men who've kept bees longer than some of them have been married. And the moment the first hive is cracked open for inspection, the mood in the yard changes. One of them steps back from the box like it might follow him. "Don't even bring those near my yard," he says, only half joking. Another runs a hand over his jaw, looking at the spotty brood pattern, the crawling bees with wings bent at wrong angles. "That's not a bargain," he says. "That's an expensive problem waiting to spread." Someone suggests, not entirely as a joke, that the colonies should be burned rather than sold, that whatever's wrecked them could just as easily wreck everyone else's bees, too. A few men laugh quietly to themselves when they see who's still standing near the boxes after the warnings start. They assume he simply doesn't know what he's looking at. He does. He just isn't looking at what they're looking at. When the auctioneer opens the bidding, nobody raises a hand for nearly a full minute. Then he does. $50. Equipment included. The auctioneer barely finishes saying "sold" before someone mutters that he just bought himself a funeral. Be honest, would you have spent $50 on those colonies, or would you have walked away like everyone else standing in that yard? Something to think about as you keep watching. What did he see that a yard full of experienced beekeepers missed? He isn't buying honey production. He isn't buying this year's crop or even next year's. He's buying drawn comb worth more than the winning bid, hive bodies and extractors that would cost thousands new, and something else, something buried underneath all that visible collapse, genetics that survived 2 winters of total neglect. A colony that lives through that kind of abandonment and is still standing, however weakly, is a colony that's already proven something about itself. Not every weak colony is a dying colony. Some just need the mite load knocked down before the damage becomes permanent. He doesn't know yet how bad the coming year will get for everyone else. He just knows the county has been getting sloppier about mite management for years, and sloppiness always comes due eventually. So that fall, instead of pulling a single frame of honey, he does something almost nobody else has the patience for. He starts over. He's out before sunrise most mornings, breath fogging in the cold, move in, hive to hive with a small glass jar and a cup of rubbing alcohol. He isn't guessing. He shakes a scoop of bees into the jar, swirls it, counts what settles at the bottom, and writes a number on the lid of each box in grease pencil. Colony by colony, he's building a picture nobody else in the county has bothered to build. Some of the numbers are bad, worse than he expected. In one hive, he finds a queen laying almost nothing but drone brood, a dying signal if he's ever seen one. He pinches her between two fingers, sets her aside, and opens a small cage holding a young mated queen he ordered weeks earlier. He slides her in and closes the lid, and for a moment he just stands there, wondering if there's still enough life left in that box to accept her, or if he's already too late. He melts down frame after frame of blackened old comb in a rendering pot behind the shed, the smell of old wax and propolis hanging in the winter air, and replaces it with clean foundation that goes in stark white against the weathered boxes. Weak colonies get merged, two half-empty hives becoming one that might actually make it. Anything showing promise gets split instead, so the good genetics don't stay locked inside a single box. Why is he spending money instead of making it? Why replace equipment that still technically works? In spring, he plows up a strip along the fence row and plants it in clover and wildflowers, while every other apiary in the county is adding hives instead of forage. A neighbor driving past slows down just long enough to ask if he's lost his mind. He doesn't stop planning. Stories like this remind us that the biggest opportunities often look like the biggest mistakes at first. If you enjoy real stories of overlooked value and rural ingenuity, you're in the right place. Right by April, he thinks he's through the worst of it. He's wrong. A hard, late frost rolls through the county and stays for 9 days, killing the first bloom just as his rebuilt colonies need it most. 2 of his newly requeened hives collapse anyway. The young queens never quite took hold, and by the time he catches it, there's nothing left to save. He stands over the empty boxes longer than he needs to. Money is tighter than he'd like to admit. Every split, every queen, every round of feed has come out of pocket, and there's no income yet to show for any of it. Just more expenses stacked on top of a $50 bet that's starting to look, even to him, like it might not pay off. A neighbor asks, not unkindly, if it's maybe time to cut his losses and sell off what's left. He doesn't answer that so much as he goes back out the next morning and does the same work he did the morning before. No dramatic turnaround, no sudden breakthrough, just the alcohol jar, the grease pencil, the frames, the feed. Consistency, when nothing else is working, is the only thing he actually controls. What is he preparing for that nobody else sees? By June, something in the yard has changed. It's in the sound before it's in anything else. The low, steady hum coming from boxes that were dead silent in February. He pulls a frame mid-season mostly out of habit and finds it packed edge to edge with capped brood, tight and even. The kind of pattern that only comes from a strong queen and a healthy colony working in rhythm. Foragers pour in and out of the entrances heavy with pollen. The first real nectar flow of the year is on, and for the first time, his bees are pulling it hard. He still isn't harvesting. He's watching, waiting to see if what he's built can hold. The first sign in July barely registers. A commercial beekeeper 2 counties over reports higher than normal summer losses and blames the weather. Nobody thinks much of it. By August, it isn't isolated. A mid-sized operation closer to home loses nearly half its colonies in a matter of weeks. Queens vanishing, brood patterns falling apart. Then a third operation, then a fourth. A mite population that had been quietly building resistance to standard treatments for years finally crosses a threshold, and combined with a summer drought that starved out natural forage, it doesn't just weaken colonies, it collapses them. By September, orchard owners are calling around in a panic, trying to secure pollination hives before fall bloom, and finding almost none available. Agricultural officials who were driving farm to farm, taking notes back in the spring, are now driving farm to farm, trying to contain something that's already spread past containing. At this point, what do you think happened when inspectors finally reached his hives? Did the same collapse tearing through the rest of the county find its way down that gravel road too? Or had all that unglamorous work still not been enough? Nobody thinks to check his place right away. There's too much else going on. But eventually, the way word does in a small county, someone remembers the auction from the year before. The man who bought all those dying colonies for $50, and wonders, almost as an afterthought, whether anyone's heard from him. Someone drives out to look. What they find is a working apiary in full undisturbed rhythm. Boxes stacked 3 and 4 high, heavy with capped honey. Entrances crowded with returning foragers, wings blurring in the afternoon light. When he pulls a frame to show them, the brood pattern is tight, and even from corner to corner, the mark of a healthy queen in a healthy colony. Exactly what half the county has stopped being able to produce. It isn't luck, and it was never a secret. It's the mite counts logged in grease pencil on every lid since November. It's the queen he pinched out with his own fingers and replaced without knowing if it would work. It's the frost that took 2 hives in April and the discipline that kept him showing up anyway. It's an acre of clover that fed his bees through a drought that starved everyone else's forage. He removed almost every weakness from his operation a full season before the county's collapse ever arrived, not because he predicted the exact disaster, but because he never stopped treating every colony like the pressure that eventually hit the whole region was already sitting inside it, waiting. Commercial beekeepers who lost 30, 40, 60% of their colonies need replacement bees for spring, and there are almost none to be had. Orchard owners who depend on rented hives for pollination are calling anyone who still has healthy stock. Word moves fast once local farmers start recommending the man on the gravel road themselves. The waiting list forms without him asking for it. Nucleus colonies first, sold to beekeepers trying to rebuild from nothing. Then hive rentals for orchards that can't afford to skip another pollination season. He doesn't raise his prices to take advantage of the shortage. He doesn't need to. And when the demand outpaces what he can responsibly supply, he turns people away rather than split his strongest colonies too thin. Healthy bees matter more to him than fast money, and everyone who deals with him seems to understand why within about 5 minutes of standing in his yard. Within 2 years, 42 abandoned colonies bought for $50 have become one of the most respected apiaries in the region. Built not on the biggest honey harvest, but on a season nobody was watching, when he quietly fixed the one problem everyone else assumed would fix itself. The story started in silence. Dead bottom boards, empty brood combs, veteran beekeepers staring into boxes that used to roar. It ends in sound. At sunrise along a gravel road most people still don't know the name of. Thousands of bees lift off into the morning light, wings catching the first sun, carrying pollen back toward hives that were never supposed to survive at all. The hum rolls out across the clover he planted when everyone told him he was wasting his time. Most people thought he bought dying bees. What he really bought was a season nobody else was willing to spend. And by the time the county understood what that season had built, the work was already finished. Have you ever seen someone everyone dismissed turn out to be right in the end? I'd love to hear your story in the comments.